Hello everyone, welcome back to the RPG game series. And in this video we're going to be making blocking. As you can see, there's block, and when you press F it automatically blocks even after an end lag. So if you get stunned, you press F, it automatically blocks after you get unstunned. And then there's also effects in this video, like there's animations, there's blocking works, there's effects as you can see. And yeah, let's get right into it. So first of all, you need to add a new remote event. In remotes, there's block instead of combat, and in replication there's effects. It's for the effects. Okay, that's done. And then I've also added new animations for blocking and hits, but you don't need to copy this. So alright. Then I'll show you the block script, which is here. So in combat, not this, in server storage, there's a combat system. In base combat, there's blocks. As you can see, there's a new property. I don't think this is new, I forgot, but there's a property called block animation. And this property is for the block animation. Okay, and then in light attack, what you need to add is a new check for blocking. So if the user is blocking, then it's an end. Then we can't attack while we're blocking. Okay? And then there's also a new function, a new method, which is block. I'll show you this later. For now, I'll show you this combat server. So here we have a block. Okay? We have a normal event block. So in block.onServerEvent, event, we have player. It's the default parameter, and it's blocking. It's blocking the switch. So if you want your character to block, then you set it's blocking to true. If you don't, then you set it to false. Okay, so you get the player, you get the profile, you get the weapon, and you get the player weapon. Now if you want the character to block, then you set block buffer to true, and then you call player weapon block. And if you want them to unblock, then you set block buffer to false, and do the same with this, except you don't put in any parameters here. So I'll explain to you what is a block buffer, but first I'll show you the client script, which is here. Combat input, there's block. So input began, we want to be able to buffer block, so it can't be an else, because we want to press F and it'll send the remote event at the same time as we're M1ing. But if we add in an else, then if we're M1ing, we can't press F and buffer block. So it cannot be an else if, it has to be an if. Then we send block fire server true, input ended, fire server false. I'll set it to F. I set it to F. So now what is block buffer? As I've explained before, when I hold F and when I'm stunned, I want it so that my character automatically blocks as soon as I'm unstunned. That's a really clean feature, I think, and I think every game should have it. So let's say you're stunned. You hold F, and as soon as you're unstunned, you automatically unblock. You automatically block. So how is this possible? So well, we're using an attribute called block buffer. Okay, we set block buffer to true, and then what? And then in our block script, what we're going to do is we're going to check if block buffer is true. Check if user wants to block, and then we check if block buffer is true. If it's true, then we check if the user is stunned. Okay, if it's false, you wait until the character is unstunned or the user stops buffering. If it's true, then we block. And if false, then we're not gonna block. So let's go to base combat. Here we have block. We get the character, we make sure we can't block if we're at, we got the value, stun, attacking, and lag, so we add in a check, we can't block if we're stunned and whatnot. We get the humanoid, we get the animator. Here we're playing animations in the server. I know it's better to play them in the client, but in this system, I think it's more convenient to play animations in the server. But in effects and animations in which you play for other people for when they get hit, then I do that in the client, because that's a lot more possible to me, because it's not that hard to me. Because if you want to add in client animations with server set combat, then it's gonna be really tricky. So here first we check is blocking, which is block buffer. Honestly, this parameter isn't even needed. This one, it's not even needed. So yeah. So is the character buffering block? If they are, then we check. Are they attacking? Are they in unlag? Are they in stunned? Are they blocking already? So we're going to have to keep waiting until the character isn't attacking, the character isn't stunned, the character isn't in unlag, and the character isn't blocking. So yeah. I don't think this one makes sense actually, but it works, I promise. And here, instead of this interval, so this is what's being repeated in every interval. This function. We wait and we check. Is the character block buffering or not? If they aren't, then they stop wanting to block. If they don't want to block, then we'll have to return, stop the script. And then we check if the block animation exists. If they do, then we load the animation and we play. And then we set blocking to true. Okay? Else, we stop the animation using a function here. We get the animator. It's a function, it has the character and animation name. We get all the animations. We loop through the animation inside of the player. We check if the animation name is the one in the parameter. If it is, then we stop. And then we set blocking to false when we print unblocked. It's just for debugging. And then I'll also add in a guard break for the 5th hit in a light attack. So as you can see right here, there's block interaction. If combo is 5, then block interaction becomes guard break. And we put it right here. And then I'll tell you about the hit module. So here, now we have a check for blocking. So here, first we add in a new type, block interaction, blockable if you want your attack to be blockable, guard break if you want your attack to guard break, and ignore guard if you want your attack to ignore guard, just hit through the guard. Okay? Now, here we check if the player is blocking. If they are, then we check for the block interaction. But first, before that, we need to add in a default value to block interaction to blockable. So if you don't add in any parameters, then it will be blockable. Your attack will be blockable. So if it's blockable, then we're going to do nothing. We're going to print, But if you want to add in block HP, you can. But right now, I don't want to. And then, if it's guard break, then we do a guard break function with the victim parameter. And if it ignores guard, then it just does a print without a return. So here it returns. Therefore, the script below this, the lines below this, it won't run. Same with this. It won't run this lines below this. Okay. So now what's the guard break function? We have a guard break stun duration, which is 2 seconds. We stop the animation of victim blocking. So since victim is playing an animation called blocking, as you can see right here, you need to adjust it to your animation name. So here it's called blocking, but yours might be different. We use stun handler to stun the humanoid with the guard break stun duration. We set attribute blocking to false. And then in the remote event, we fire all clients, victim, victim. We pass in the table victim, effect name. So the victim is the victim. The effect name is what effect you are going to play. Okay. Now of course you have to get the remote here and stuff. Same with the client. You have to get the remote. Same with the server. You have to get the remote. You have to get the remote. Okay. Now I think blocking is done. That's how you block. But right now there are no effects. Okay, there are no effects. So what I wanted to do is, okay, so now I'll explain to you how the effects work. So what I wanted to achieve is client-sided effects, because if the server handles all the effects, then the server will be laggy. It will strain the server really heavily from the twins, from the playing animations, from everything. So, and the reason why I do this in the client and not attack animations is because I'm using a server-sided combat system. It's going to be tricky to do client animations for server-sided combat systems. But here it's totally possible. It's totally possible with client-sided effects. I'll show you how. So here, client-sided effects. Okay. In hit module, you apply the damage. If it wants to do animation or effects, we go to the client handles effects. The server sends consistent parameters, which is the victim, the attacker, the effect name, position if it's required. I think those are the parameters so far right now. I forgot, I might be wrong. But I added in a few options here, which is predetermined effects in the clients. Server tells the client what it wants, but yeah, this is the option, not any of this. So what it does is the client has an effect module. It has an effect module, effect loader module. What it does, it fetches all the effects, fetches all effect modules. Now it will receive a remote event, receive remote client with parameters. Check if the effect request exists in the loaded modules. If it does, fire the effect function. It's pretty simple, so I'll show you right now. In replicated storage, there's client systems. This is a folder. We had an effect system. It's similar to this. The pattern is similar to the systems and the system name. This. We open them. There's an effects player. What it does is it gets the remote. It gets the collection, which is all the effect modules here. We add a table for loaded effects. We loop through this folder and we put the module name. We index the module name and acquire the module. It loads the modules and then we put them in loaded effects. We have the remote here. We receive a remote event. It has params as the parameters, which has victim, which has attacker, effect name, and position. They're all optional except for the effect name. So we check for the effect by indexing loaded effects with the effect name. If it exists, then we call them. If it doesn't, then we warn. So here's an example effect that I made, which is block break. So the effects are, it's not a regular module. It's not this. It's not this module. It's not this, okay? So what the pattern is, is that it returns one function. It doesn't return a table, it returns one function. As you can see right here as well, it returns one return function. That's the pattern. So here we return a function. We warn the victim must exist. We assert it first. Asserting means if the value doesn't exist, then it will error. So yeah, it ensures that this value exists. And then I play animations, add in effects, all those stuff. You can't copy this one by one because you have your own effects. And here's the pattern for animations. So here's the thing about animations, you guys. Animations, when you play it in your own player, in the client, it will load to the server. So that means when you fire this remote to all players, it will fire to the player that is to the character that is playing that animation. So it can be jarring. Here, I'll show you. I'll draw a diagram. So here, as you can see, hit module. It fires requests to all players. Animation on character 2. Animation on character 2. Animation on character 2. To all players. Player 1. Player 2. Player 3. So in their screens, animation will play on character 2. But as soon as character 2 plays the animation, and then it will become jarring. Because it will reset, it will bug out, it will be messy. So what I do here is that I check if is the victim a player or not. If they are, then we must check, is the player the victim? If they are, then we play the animation. If not, then nothing. And else, if it's an NPC, then there's no client. In the server, they're not actually playing any servers. In the server, they're not actually playing any animations. But we make it appear like they do by playing it in the client. So we check if the unit exists, and then we play the animations like that. There's also hit. It's just animation to play the hit effect. Here in hit module, see, there's an animation right here, and you can't forget to load the animation, and you can't forget to load the effect module. So here there's a new local script, load modules. It loads the effect players, and that's it. It's a pretty simple video. If you want to test it out, you can by adding a dummy, blocking dummy, adding a script. We just wait until weapons exist, until g.weapons has a value. If they do, then we block. But first we need to add in block buffer here. As you can see, this for some reason doesn't work. I don't even know why. So what I was trying to do is, if it gets stunned, and if it gets unstunned, then it will block again, but it's not working for some reason. So yeah, so here, as you can see, it's working here. Okay, there's effects here, there's effects here. You can add in sounds, you can add in particles, whatever you want. That's it for this video, for blocking, for effects. Thank you so much for watching.